I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to again please call the roll.
Trustee Camerer.
Present.
Carbonaro, absent. Daney.
Yes, here.
GABRENYA. Here. Hopkins.
Here.
Ranky.
Present.
President Wallace.
Here. First item on our agenda this evening is in Community Economic Development. Chairman GABRENYA.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our first item has to do with a BEDA application for the streets of Bartlett. I would ask Tony Frayden to take us through the application, please.
Thank you, Chairman GABRENYA.
Tony, before you get started, let me just let the notes reflect that I am recusing myself of this in this discussion.
Thank you. This is Mr. Manny Rafidia's second BEDA application. You recall seeing him late last year for his first one, and then earlier this year several times as he went through and gained village board approvals for various special uses and variances. This is his second application. You've seen him doing quite a bit of work over the past year. Staff has been working with him for the better part of 2 years now, and we used the BEDA program at the point when it was newly created a little more than a year ago as an incentive in an effort to try to attract him and to do this type of project, redevelopment of Bartlett Plaza that is now called Streets of Bartlett. This is the largest redevelopment project that we've had in the downtown for quite a few years, in excess of $2 million in investment. This is after his purchase of the property in late May. You can see a lot of the work that's been done, changing on a daily basis almost at this point. He's been working very hard and very closely, not just with economic development staff, but building staff, planning and development on nearly a daily basis throughout this year on this massive redevelopment project. We've been working with Mr. Rafidia, who's here with his son Jeremy, in attracting new businesses to the center as well. And he has secured 4 leases, and all 4 businesses are sales tax producing businesses, as well as working closely with existing tenants to retain the many businesses that are already located within Streets of Bartlett. I'm not going to go through every contract that's in the packet today, but detailed in the packet are contracts totaling over $1.1 million. That's for the contracts that he had earlier this spring that mostly pertain to the facade renovation and redevelopment that you've seen, and does not include all the exterior build-out costs for interior improvements. Mr. Rafidia, in both of his BEDA requests, had requested $250,000. And we have explained to him that $50,000 is the maximum BEDA grant amount for this program. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Streets of Bartlett is comprised of 2 separate and distinctive pins, one for the L-shaped building and a separate pin for the building that includes the former grocery store space. He's now close to having that divided into 4 separate units. And again, Mr. Rafidia is here with his son, Jeremy, who can speak to the improvements that they're making and several more that are planned in the very near future, including the parking lot as well as installing new lighting within the next few weeks.
I have one question I'd like to ask the petitioner. What's going on with the outlot adjacent to the CVS? It looks like there's been some concrete base put there. What?
Well, initially, that was just there to kind of get the ball rolling. We were thinking about doing, during the winter time, maybe an ice skating area or just like maybe a little fire pit with, electronic ones with seating area. Nothing really developing at this moment, but it was just an idea we had floating around.
It's going to burn the Christmas tree down. It's Christmas tree lot down.
We could do that. Yeah, we could do that. We could have, the sale of Christmas trees there too. It's definitely an option.
I want to tell you guys, I'm in that mall quite a bit, And I think what you've done out there right now is incredible. I think the job.
Thank you very much.
When you first came before us, I had envisioned some improvement, but the improvement that I'm seeing is overwhelming. It's just fantastic, and I want to
Appreciate that.
compliment you on the work that you've done. I want to ask you one more thing. Have you had any interest at all for a grocery store?
Yes, we have.
You have? That's encouraging.
We've been approached by a large national tenant that has come around the site twice now to check out the renovations and to see the acquisition of new tenants, which is something they were looking for initially. Initially, it was tough for them to see why they would come to the center because of how run down it was.
Right.
And now that they've seen the work that has been done, they are more motivated to come, and we are now in talks with them more and plan to hopefully have more meetings and get some letters of intent rolling and some official paperwork going. So, yes, we've been in talks.
Fantastic.
Gentlemen, I'll tell you, I cannot believe the changes that are there, and that's, when I drive by it now, you know, compared to what it was before, you really need to be complimented. You've done an outstanding job.
Thank you very much.
That largest space where the grocery stores had been, part of that was sectioned off on the side for
Yeah,
individuals. What will the largest space inside?
So there's the 4 units, there's the 3 that face Devon, and you still have the large one. Is that the one you're referring to? Right now, we are in talks with a large national fitness facility. Hopefully, we'll get in there, and they'll take a portion of that.
Okay. You had mentioned the last time the family entertainment, that just isn't,
Well,
won't come to fruition at this
that
point?
would, so the fitness facility would take up a portion of that large area, and there would still be some square feet, I think, maybe 8,000 square feet left over for something of that nature that could
Potential.
potentially come about.
Okay. Looks fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I made a few notes. We really have been working in 3 parts here to try to improve everything. Renovation, which I appreciate you guys seeing, and we're happy with everyone's reaction so far. Acquiring new tenants and maintaining our current tenants. Those are the 3 main objectives that we've tried to work on coming here. To start, though, we've installed 2 new pylon signs that you could see off of Devon. They're loaded up with the bricks, and they've got the limestone sphere on top. They're lit up. It's very nice. We've finished 90% of the facade, which many of you have seen. Most of the landscaping has been completed. We planted 70, 80 trees of that sort and some shrubbery and bushes and whatnot. The facade lighting on the facade, we're going to do 70 goosenecks. They're going to be on the facade coming down, and then also underneath while you walk, we're going to install new lighting is there as well. 14 downtown-style pole lights will be scheduled to be installed within the next 2 to 4 weeks, so that should improve the look of the parking lot in the center as well. That is it for the renovations portion. Now, as far as acquiring new tenants, we also have installed new fire alarm and sprinkler systems in all of those 3 new units, which is extremely important, and the 5,000 square feet of concrete siding that we've added as well over on those 3 new units. As far as acquiring new tenants, we acquired 4,500 square feet of new lease tenant improvement for our Bonetti's. That should be ready to open on October 1st. We have Delicious Crepes and Roti, which is over here moving to us for 2,600 square feet. That's a new lease build-out. They'll be transitioning over and to open November 1, hopefully. And we also have ice cream shop that's going to be taking up 1,200 square feet. That's a new lease as well. And lastly, we have a new restaurant called One Taco Dos Tequilas that will be as part of the new 3-unit spaces. That'll be occupying 4,000 square feet, and that's currently in permit process. And that should be scheduled to open around December, hopefully. In addition, we're going to be completing the paving. We're going to reseal the lot, so it's going to look much nicer and maybe a little bit more even as you go across, because it's kind of, you get going and it's a little bumpy. So we're going to hopefully clear that up. And Really, we've really just been blessed by a great team of contractors, and the village has been very helpful. And, my dad's worked extremely hard, and I have to, get to where we are now. So we're all very happy at the current point where we are at now. So, thank you.
Well, hang,
thank
one more.
Thank you,
With the-
Jeremy.
With the additional improvements that you're doing, what do you foresee as completion?
For the renovations,
Yeah, for the renovation?
hopefully by the end of this year.
Really?
Yes, and then the acquisition of new tenants to fill the entire center, we're hopefully, we're targeting the end of next year to fill the entire center. So that would be really nice if we could do that.
If you had to get a grocery store, would you have to build an outbuilding on that land?
That is what they're looking for right now, yes. That's what we would have to do.
Any other questions? I would propose we move this to the village board agenda for a vote.
Yep,
Thank you very much.
thank
You
you.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Would that go directly to the board or to the committee?
All right. Ready? Our next item, the next item on our agenda is the Rotary Club of Bartlett clock. The Rotary Club would like to purchase and install a four-faced street clock on a portion of the village-owned town center property. The club had previously purchased a water fountain for this same site. The club's committee has selected a classic design that is congruent with the development approach the village has followed for the town center. They have, with the assistance of the village staff, selected a desired location as well. The club wishes to begin the second phase of fundraising for the clock project. Having already dedicated $20,000 to the clock project, they seek to raise an additional $25,000 to $30,000 to fund the purchase, the installation, and the landscaping around the clock base. Bartlett Rotary is seeking to work with the village to draft an agreement that will address the installation and maintenance parameters relative to the clock. And I would present this to the board for discussion. And Paula, do you have any additional comments?
I would just say that Susie Sias is here from the Rotary Club as a representative and a member of the clock committee. This has been a project that the Rotary Club has been working on for many years and have mustered up the seed money for it. And before they further their efforts in fundraising, wanting to get the site and our approval since we own that property.
What specific site are we thinking about?
Right across the street by the fountain, I believe, right?
Okay, so right next to the fountain?
A little bit in front and over a little bit, but basically,
Maybe-
yes.
Kind of next to TL's Rock,
No, on the other side.
on the other side.
Up closer to where the Rotary drinking fountain is right now.
Okay.
And do you, I think I'm somewhat privy to this information, but how, can you make a comment on that Rotary clubs, this is kind of a tradition among many Rotary clubs across the nation, right?
Yeah, that's right. And the manufacturer that we're working with actually designs these clocks for Rotary clubs. Not uniquely, but other organizations as well. But we did choose the manufacturer that works with Rotary clubs. They're very, very nice clocks, about 12 feet high, four-faced. It'll look very nice downtown.
Very good. Any additional questions? What is the process? I'm sorry, I asked for questions and then I had one. What is the process then? If we say yes, we'd, as a board, like to move forward, you come up with a specific location, or we move this onward?
We'll come up with a specific, a site map so that we know, exactly where it's going, how it's being fed with the electricity, where the landscaping's going to be, and then how it will be cared for moving forward.
Okay.
Can't we get a winding clock? One of those ones that have the,
Key, where you get a big key.
yeah. With a train whistle on it. I wanted a train whistle.
We'll look into it.
For that kind of money, it should be a Rolex.
We can look into that as well.
What type of warranty comes with a clock like this? And are we going to be, is this is very generous for Rotary to even be thinking about this, but are we going to be, the village going to be maintaining this clock, or is the Rotary going to help out with that in the future?
That's what we're going to hammer out.
Yeah, we're still discussing all of those issues. We wanted to make sure and come before you that you wanted a clock to begin with before we, took it into the home stretch, but those are all issues that we are discussing.
I think this would be a great addition to our downtown.
I think at one point it was going to have, Town Center was going to have a clock tower, yes?
That was the original design. I think there's supposed to be a clock tower in town.
Right.
But I think it's really nice now that I know that a rotary clock is something that exists. I've noticed it when I've been traveling to other communities that they're front and center in their downtown, and they're a really nice focal and gathering point as well.
I just want to throw something in here, and I feel, unless somebody has a better idea, I believe that if Rotary Club is giving $45,000 to $50,000 for a clock to the village, I think at that point in time, I'd like to see the maintenance and continue with, that should be turned over to the village, and it should become the village's responsibility and not rest on the shoulders of the Rotary any longer, based on the amount of money that's putting forward to bring a clock into the village. And one of the other, some of the thoughts I have about that is, who's to say whether or not the Rotary Club survives? I saw that with the JCs. Years ago, we had the JCs here in the village, and that club no longer exists. And you look at the membership of the Lions Club, they're going extremely strong, but who's to say that, the Rotary will be able to maintain their membership and whatnot? And I just, unless I'm convinced otherwise or somebody has a better idea, I think that the maintenance and repair and of the clock should be, at that point in time, turned over to the village. So something to consider and talk about.
I think what we'll talk about with the Rotary Club, I know that there's a specific maintenance program that the company recommends, so let us see what that maintenance would entail and bring it back to you.
Sure. Yeah, it's just an initial reaction, initial thoughts.
Anything additional? Thank you, Susan.
Thanks for being here.
And we look forward to more
Just
information.
work on that train whistle on the clock, too. And the giant key to,
How about if we get somebody at Rotary to go out there and blow a whistle at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, midnight, not me.
That is all from our committee.
thank you, Chairman Cabrera. Police and Health, Chairman Ranky stepping in for Chairman Carbonaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have one item, the Hanover Township Emergency Services Agreement, and I'll turn that over to the chief.
Thank you. Back in September of last year, I brought this issue before the board about our potential use of Hanover Township Emergency Services to assist the police department with emergency situations. This topic is back before the committee, number one, for me to provide an overview of how we've used Hanover Township Emergency Services over the last year, as well as to discuss a question that was posed regarding whether the village should have a mutual aid agreement in order to continue to use Hanover Township Emergency Services to assist the police department during those emergency situations. So during the last year, we've used them a total of 7 times. In September for a serious traffic crash, in December for a natural gas leak to assist with traffic control there, in February for downed wires, assisting with traffic control, in March assisting with a power outage and traffic control, in May for traffic control again for another serious traffic crash. They assisted us in July, on July 4th, with providing us with portable lights to assist with crossing pedestrians at the bike path down here on South Bartlett Road when it was torn up due to construction. And then in July, they also assisted with traffic control around Sycamore Trails School for a natural gas leak. So where that becomes valuable to the police department is instead of our officers standing out there and directing traffic during critical incidents, they're free to still answer calls, to do evacuations during these natural gas leaks if it's required, it frees up my personnel. If I have to have personnel out there, then we have to call additional personnel in from home because I don't have enough to do traffic control and mitigate these incidents. So my experience with dealing with Hanover Township Emergency Services over the last years, they've been professional. They've responded quickly. They always send a supervisor along with them. So if we have issues with their staff, we deal directly with the supervisor, and the supervisor deals with his own or her own staff. So since that time, like I said, a question has come up about whether we should have a mutual aid agreement, and Attorney Mraz authored a memo that is included in the packet. And I think it's, after reviewing the act, there's some ambiguities and contradictions, and we feel it would be safer for the village as far as protection from liability goes if we were to have a mutual aid agreement.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee? I think it makes sense to have a written agreement. If we're going to have an agreement for the placement of a clock, I think, emergency services certainly warrants an IGA.
With you 100%. Yeah. They can guard the clock.
How long has Hanover Township Emergency Services been around?
I'm not sure offhand, but Assistant Director Caleb Hansen is here, as well as Hanover Township's Assistant Administrator Kristen Vanna, so maybe they could answer some of those questions.
We're actually celebrating our 10th year anniversary this year, so it was started in 2009.
I kind of fundamentally disagree with the point of Hanover Township Emergency Services. I think that our fire department and our police departments have handled the situations. Me more so than some people on the board, I see this on my tax bill, a separate line item. And it always starts out small, and it just keeps growing. So I hate to see 10 years from now, more counties or more municipalities using your services, hiring more full-time people, and before you know it, you guys are up there with, the village and the fire departments. I disagree with this fundamentally. So,
Is this an issue that Bartlett Police Department needs more resources?
Well, I don't know that for sure. I mean, all of the other departments I talked to that used Hanover Township use them for the same thing. Actually, some of them use them for more. They use them for special events and things like that. According to the act, we feel like it should be limited to emergency situations if we were to use them. It's hard to forecast how many people you would need to deal with an incident as it comes up. Or if you hired more people, depending on how many you hire, would you need them all of the time? So I think that the services that they offer and using volunteers and being able to have them there quickly really suits our need. And we've found in my discussions with other chiefs from the other communities, they found them to be very helpful and useful as well in those types of situations.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so it sounds like the attorney's got a little bit of work to do, huh?
I think we should, my opinion is in that memo, in short, I think it would be advisable to have a mutual aid agreement and not just an arrangement. There's some question, the way the statute is written, the safe and conservative approach would be to have that agreement and just spell things out. You may, feel we shouldn't have that, but I think in these instances, if we didn't have them in those 7 instances where they were used, he'd be calling in officers, paying them time and a half, and so they're not always the same scope. There may be incidents where they're not big enough, and we need more help depending on the size of the emergency. So I think if you're going to use them, you should, and my last opinion was that it really should be limited to emergency services, at least with respect to the traffic control outside of their boundaries. This is really an issue strictly of, I think, protecting the immunities and liability, and there should be an agreement, because the statute does provide protection to the participants when they're acting within the scope of the act. So an agreement would be the prudent way to go, so we'll draft that up.
Thank you very much.
So does this include them going into other counties?
No.
So this, we're only going to use them in Cook County?
No, no. It would be, if it's an emergency service, it can be in the village, boundaries. That's our agreement, including the DuPage County portion. My reservation before was traffic control, say down at the high school. I don't think they've got, my opinion is they didn't really have authority for things beyond emergency services that are covered by the Act. I believe the Act gives them that power and authority outside of just Cook County in their Hanover Township boundaries if it's an emergency. So we were using them for emergencies in both Cook and DuPage. That's covered by the statute. As Trustee Ranke pointed out, to be safe, or you should have then a mutual aid arrangement. The statute says you may, but then it also said it should be approved by both entities. So in my reading of that is we'll have an agreement that we take to both boards, the Township Board and the Village Board, and approve it, and then there will be no question.
All right.
Is there any other agencies in the DuPage County, like Hanover Township, or Hanover Emergency Services?
I'm not aware of any.
I'm not aware of any either.
Looks like they're keeping their budgets down a little bit, maybe.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
That's all we have for police and health this evening.
Once again, Trustee Ranke, thank you for stepping in for Chairman Carbonaro. Final item on our agenda this evening is under Public Works. Chairman Camerer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, tonight we have on the agenda the tree survey results, of which I think we can turn over to staff and let them explain the significance of that. If I can get to it, there it is. And so, Dan, take it up.
Thank you, Trustee Camerer. As you'll recall, we received a grant to do the tree inventory. They recently completed that survey, and I'm going to have our village forester, Sarah Christensen, kind of go over briefly what they found.
Thanks, Dan.
Didn't they find some trees?
Just a few. Okay. So for every tree in the survey, these are all the parameters or information that they collected on every single tree. So they would start with tree status. So active tree means there was a tree in that location. Planting space means there was appropriate space for a tree to be planted, but there wasn't one. And stump, meaning that there was a tree that has been cut down, but the stump hasn't been ground out and removed yet. So they would put the address for all those locations, and then obviously if there was an active tree, they would collect all this information. The DBH is something, it's a industry term, and it's the trunk size diameter. It stands for diameter at breast height, and obviously breast height is different for everybody, but on average, they consider that to be about 4.5 feet above the ground, or from the ground. And then one of the other important things was every tree got a condition rating that was a 1 through 5. 1 was excellent, 3 is average, and 5 was very poor. So these are some of the basic stats that we got from that. So in Bartlett, there are 15,282 municipally managed trees and spaces for 2,993 trees in town. Another interesting point is that there's 117 different species in town, which is pretty impressive. And the company that did this for us, that created this report that I'm getting this information from, Graph, they actually told us that based on this number of different species, we could actually become an accredited level 2 arboretum, the village could be, because of that different amount. So that's something that we're going to be looking into in the future. And then another interesting point is that our average tree condition was 2.97, which means that we're slightly above average, which is pretty great. So this shows that condition curve based on your standard bell curve. So you'll see that we actually, for our average trees, we have more than would be expected in town and actually less than the below average or poor trees. Another important thing to note with this condition is that no trees that were a size of 8 inches or smaller were rated anything better than average. And the way that the company described it to us is that you wouldn't call a 3-year-old a genius because they haven't had a chance to prove that they're a genius yet. So anything that's a smaller tree, they just considered average or poor, or very poor.
You're hurting the feeling of the smaller trees.
Kind of. We'll get to them in a second. So speaking of the smaller trees, this is a breakdown of the average age classes of our population. And this might seem a little shocking that our tree population is pretty small, but you probably aren't surprised to hear that this is due to all the removals and replacements that we've had to do because of the emerald ash borer from 3 to 5 years ago, all that we did. So this is showing that, and this is based on the estimate that most trees grow a 1/2 inch in diameter per year. This means that a third of our population is less than 15 years old, and another third is only about 20 to 25 years old, meaning the last third are considered our mature trees. So unfortunately, only a third of our population is considered mature. So my takeaway from this is that we need to be putting a lot of our priority into these smaller trees, so eventually they become the larger mature trees. This is a breakdown of all the, I don't know if I mentioned this, but along with all the ratings of everything, they also gave a maintenance recommendation for every single tree. So I think that this is pretty great that out of 15,000 trees, 11,000 of them were rated as cyclical prune, which means that they just need your basic every 3 to 5 year maintenance pruning. There wasn't anything dangerous or a large amount of deadwood, that kind of thing. So that's pretty great, and that means that we are keeping up on our tree pruning by the fact that 11,000 out of 15,000 have been pruned within the last 3 to 5 years. You'll also see that there's a hazard prune on there, which there's only 66 trees that have that. This means that there was a hazardous part of the tree, but you only need to take part of it out, and then the tree would be fine other than that. So we're currently working on that list. And then the hazard removed, there were 10 trees, but since they created this report, we've already removed all those trees, so nothing to worry about there. Back to the diversity analysis. While it is great that we have 117 different species in town, we still have a lot of work to do. The industry standard for diversity is something called the 20-10-5 rule, which means that in any town, there should be no more than 20% of one family of plant, no more than 10% of one genus of plant, and no more than 5% of one species of plant. So unfortunately, our maples are, one species, so they are way above that 10% threshold. About a third of our population are maple trees. So yeah, not meaning that we need to take them out, but just something to consider. God forbid we never want to be in the position that we were in with the ash removals, that we need to be taking out a third of our population at any time. So just important that through our replacement program, we are adding a lot more different species than just maples, and honey locusts and lindens are the other out of the big 3 that there's a lot of in town. So just need to work on increasing our diversity. And finally, just those are my big takeaways, that, we just need to prioritize the health of our younger trees so they become our mature trees later on, and kind of even out those age classes, and just increasing our diversity through our replacement program. And I think that we've done a really great job, and then things are looking really good. So thank you very much. Do you have any questions or?
Have all of the parkway trees, the ashes that needed to be removed, are they all gone?
Yes. So we have, I think, 167 ash trees remain, but a large majority of those have been treated by the residents. They opted to actually treat them themselves. Yeah. Yeah, your neighborhood is the one that has them all, yeah. And then there's a few that might be remaining that still need to be removed, but the reason that they're still there is that at the time that we went through that area, they were looking okay. There's two different types of ash trees, green and white. The beetles went after the green first, and then when they were all gone, went after the white. So that's why they didn't show the effects quite as early as the green ashes did. So I'd say out of either it's your neighborhood or there's a handful of others left that might still need to be removed, but no hazardous dead ashes anymore.
Did that treatment on the ash work?
It is working.
Did it
I have to say,
Wow.
I was hesitant at first,
We had
but
to pay for the treatment, and it's not cheap, but
Yeah, that's what I heard.
it's working well.
yeah. Unfortunately, you're signing yourself on to every 2 or 3 year treatment that is not cheap. That's why the village didn't opt to treat any trees. But I have to say, I didn't think that it would work, but your neighborhood looks great, and it did work. So something to consider in the future if, again, God forbid, anything else does come up, that treatment might be an option for something like that in the future.
Just one other question. When you say you're offering underrepresented species, what would be some of the underrepresented species that you're talking about?
Well, currently, our program is going on right now, and I would consider some of those to be, one is called a tulip tree, and it's called that because the flowers that they have in the spring kind of look like a tulip. Yeah, it does great in the parkway, but for some reason, we don't have a lot of them. Another one that's my favorite is called a Kentucky coffee tree, that if you drive on West Bartlett into town on, an area that gets pelted with salt and cold weather and all of that, nothing can kill them. So they do very well in the parkway with all the harsh things that get thrown at them. So we're trying. The only problem is that because it's a voluntary program by residents, they're not trees that residents recognize, so they're hesitant to purchase them. So I think that comes with a little education of why these trees are nice, even though you've never heard of them before. So.
Are the trees in the area, the local trees, the oaks, the hickories, the black cherries, and that kind of thing, are they too big of trees to put on a parkway?
Black cherries aren't great just because, like I said, the salt spray and soil compaction, they don't really do well with that. Oaks can do okay, but they're kind of marginal to be in the parkway, but we do plant them. So we try just to, again, increase the diversity. But, then you get into, if the oak tree has acorns, that's not a great thing to be in the parkway either. So we do the best to get as large of a diversity, but also keep in mind where it is and pedestrian traffic, vehicle traffic, that kind of thing.
I just remember us having this discussion maybe a year or two ago where we talked about trying to keep the local species of trees without, bringing in the Japanese elm and all these other different types of species or whatever it was. And so I just thought maybe if we had the opportunity to plant local trees that were used to this climate in this area, that maybe that's a good thing as long as they work well in the parkways.
Yep, exactly.
And what are we doing to encourage residents to use that 50/50 tree replacement program?
We put it on the village website, on social media. Anytime a tree gets removed, I inform the resident that there's a replacement program. Something that I'm considering doing with this information that we have is the 2,900 planting locations that we have, sending a letter to all those places, informing them. Now that we have all that information, I think that's a really valuable resource that we'll be able to use in the future. So, because some people might not know, so I think that would help too.
I think we could maybe, when you get the trees replaced, provide, I don't know, maybe just a note saying, hey, to care for this tree, this is the best way to do it type stuff?
Every person that gets a parkway tree gets a letter from me that gives
I must not assign.
They get 2 brochures that talk about the watering and the mulching, and then I just explain the watering process and that kind of thing, just to keep in mind, because we do rely on the residents to water them and care for them in their first 3 years. So that might be new since when you got your replacement tree, but we do that now.
We got a grant to do the inventory. Is there a possibility of a grant to help further decrease the cost of filling those 2,900 spaces?
The grant that we received, there's inventory, tree planting, and then I believe writing a tree management plan. It's broken up into 3 different things, so we could in the future apply for the tree planting replacement portion of it too.
That would be great to send with that letter that says, normally it's $50, but with this grant, it's, everybody likes a sale, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially if we're a type 2 arboretum
Yeah.
in the future. I think that would be huge.
Yeah, we're going to look into that for sure.
And I just, finally, there's something very important and near and dear to my heart. I was wondering if we could prune a few of the trees hanging over a couple of the fairways at Bartlett Hills.
I don't touch the trees at
Few of them
Bartlett
out
Hills.
there.
That's Kevin's
There's a
problem.
few of them out there that need to be cut back. Where is,
Phil's not
Phil
here.
when you need him? It's his birthday or something?
We got Paul
I
tonight.
think we should send the arborist out there and take a look at, some of those look pretty
Sarah,
weak.
on the 15th hole off the tee, the tree that's on the left-hand side of the fairway, it hangs over.
Hangs over, needs to be cut out,
I'll mention it to Kevin.
or at least trimmed back.
I'm guessing the gentleman on my right and left have hit that tree once or twice.
All right, Mr. President, that is all we have on Public Works tonight.
Thank you for that information, that was fantastic. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee Camerer, seconded by trustee Daney. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Camerer,
Yes.
Daney,
Yes.
Brenya,
Yes.
Hopkins? Hopkins?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
We are adjourned.